Thank you so much for your time today for this meeting. So this is a special situation as we have Peach that is a Thai student, but from the Thai program and in exchange at ENSA Versailles. And with Peach, it's your time.
Okay, first, can you please introduce yourself, your curriculum, your life before returning to Thailand, and why you choose to return to Thailand?
Wow, okay. It's on my whole personal history. Okay. My name is Chatpong Chuenrudeemol. It sounds very complicated in Thai, but all Thai people have nicknames. So I'm called Chat for short, but I also have a Thai nickname. That's an American nickname. So just call me Chat. I'm an architect practicing in Bangkok, Thailand. I have a small office called Chat Architects, about 8 to 10 people. And how did I get back here? I was born in Thailand, but I moved to the United States when I was 6 years old. So that was back in 1979. So I lived all of my life in the US, but I came back to Thailand, at first once every year or so, but I pretty much was raised in the United States all the way through my master's. So after I finished my master's in 2000, I went to undergraduate at UC Berkeley, studied architecture. And then I worked for 2 years. And then I went to do my master's of architecture 1 at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard University. And I got my degree in 2000. And I returned to Thailand immediately after graduation. While everybody went to work in New York, San Francisco, Paris, London, I decided to go back to Bangkok because I thought it was more interesting. Because Bangkok is a wild and raw and crazy place. And so I moved back. I accepted a small commission to design my father's house. And in the meantime, I taught as a visiting professor at various universities in Thailand. What was the third question?
Why you choose to return to Thailand? But I think you answered that question.
Yeah, I just thought, I'll elaborate. I just thought that being in Southeast Asia at that time allowed me to explore newer things. But really, the context of Bangkok itself was the thing that got me excited the most. I believe that interesting projects come about when there's an interesting context. I'm not the type of person or the type of designer who likes to have a blank canvas and the client says, do whatever you want. That's very hard for me. I like kind of riffing off and bouncing off of interesting situations and contexts because I want the thing that I create to actually have a part in the bigger context. And I thought that I needed to choose an interesting context to do interesting projects. So Bangkok was the place that I was familiar with. I came back often because it was my birthplace, and it was an interesting urban context. Yep.
Next, I'm going to ask you about your research, the Bangkok Bustard. I want to know that what inspired you to start the Bangkok Bustard research.
I came back in 2000 and I designed my parents' house, which was terrible architecture. Basically, whatever I learned in school, every trick I learned, I put into this building, and it turned out horribly. But also, I was a product of Western architectural education. We learned about Corbusier, Mies, Gropius, Rem, Herzog de Meuron, everything that a good architectural student in the master's program learns about. I was a product of the studio system, right? The studio system where 10 to 12 students assembled in a studio, work at their tables, present a scheme, and then it's commented on by an expert. When you think about it, that's a strange way to work. But basically, I was a product of that system, and I came back and I started to do work, starting with my parents' house, and I also did a few other residences. And after 2, 3, 4 years, I just kind of said to myself that my work wasn't very good. And when I say good, I have kind of specific expectations as to what I think good architecture for me, not for anybody else. I didn't feel like the work that I was making was related intimately with the context, with the culture, with the tropical landscape. And it just didn't, and it was cold, not temperature cold, but emotionally cold. It was a product of kind of studio process, right? Where I was still relying on Western typologies, strategies, typical way of working, which, produce architecture that may look good for the typical person. It could go on and cover a magazine, but then you kind of have to be honest with yourself. But you have to be honest with yourself. You have to kind of set your goals as to what you want to achieve in architecture. And at that point, the reason I came back was I was interested in the context of Bangkok, correct? But then I was creating projects that were not worthy of Bangkok, And so that made me go into a little bit of a crisis, right? Which is good. It's good to have a crisis so that it forces you to really develop yourself, and to improve yourself. And so I looked around as to how I could improve the way I design, right? I said, okay, I need to really be more in touch with the context of Thailand. I don't want to use the word Thai architecture, right? Just like you guys probably don't want to use the word French architecture. That doesn't mean anything. That's superfluous. That's superficial. The same thing as I don't use the word Thai-ness or Thai architecture because it's an oversimplification of very complex things. But I want it to be rooted in local culture. I wanted my architecture to be rooted in local culture. And so I looked at 2 or 3 different things as to how to improve myself, how to get better. At that time, there are limited options as to how you can look for information. In the Western world, what the amazing thing is, whether it's historical or modern, postmodern, you have documentation, critical history analyses of everything on paper or on the web. You can learn about classical architecture, Romanesque, Corbusier, everything is documented, right? But in Thailand, what do you do if you want to create work that's rich in terms of its localness? I go to the library at various universities, but then I could only check out books on historical Thai architecture, temples, palaces, and Thai vernacular, like Thai house on stilts, right? At that time, they were starting to document vernacular architecture. There's a lot of documentation already and people were into it. But then I said, that's not enough because even if it's vernacular Thai houses, it doesn't really help a whole lot when you're doing a project in the middle of a busy Bangkok street corner, right? You can't just put up a house on stilts and tell everybody, oh, let's live tropically without air conditioning and just stay on the underside of a house on stilts. It's just as unrealistic as putting you in a glass mise box, right? And so that's when I start to ask myself, okay, then what do I have that I can learn from? And what was I interested in? What did I think was contemporary, meaning that it was applicable architecture that was live, that I could learn from. And that's when I started to look at these street food carts, shanty towns, pop-up construction, weird architectural building typologies that is never recognized, which I lovingly call them Bangkok bastards, because bastards, a person is a person who doesn't have, who doesn't know who their father is. And really, you can say a bastard doesn't know who their parents are. And it's a put down. It's like, you're a bastard. It's not a good thing to call a person. So I thought it was appropriate to name these architectural elements as bastards, because they were architecture that didn't have parents. They didn't have architects who designed them, right? They were created by normal everyday people solving everyday problems in their everyday life. And they were the purest, and they were the cleverest. They were the most adaptive, and they were really the most sustainable, because these things were created by the non-affluent poor people. They would only use materials that were cheap, free, or scavenged, right? And so to me, these were all qualities of great architecture. It just doesn't have a capital A in front of it, and it wasn't signed by a famous architect. And so that's when I started to look seriously, and then not only look, but record Bangkok Bastards, right? So maybe I'll show you some slides, but you can ask me the next question. It may lead to some visuals.
Okay, the next question is, I have the idea of doing the bastard in Paris. So do you have any guide on how you choose your bastard?
Oh, yeah.
Any requirement, or it can be anything in our life, like you say before?
To me, I never had any rules. I kind of recognize when you see something, and everybody will define what their own bastard is, because I did a workshop with Indonesian students and asked them to go out and find their own bastards in Indonesia, and they came back with different things. Somebody picked a nursery, like a little shop where you grow plants right next to the street, and this nursery became a little pocket park for the community. Like, so that was a bastard, where a bastard also performs many different things and has dual, triple personalities, right? Sometimes it can't be singled down to one name, which is lovely, right? What do we do as architects? We try to name everything. Hey, what's that typology? Oh, it's a shop house typology. And so the bastards that I find, sometimes you don't even have a typological form. Sometimes it's just a strategy. For example, there's in Thailand, as you know, Peach, there's a Talat Phai Chai flashlight market. This happens on the sidewalk, dark sidewalks, in the old part of town. And so people sell cheap, mostly stolen items by just putting down a rug on the sidewalk and turning on their flashlight to show the customers who walk by. And so the space is basically this cone of light. So how do you define that? It's not even a space, it's a strategy. So sometimes Bangkok bastards are strategies, not form, right? So that even breaks what a definition of what architecture is, which I think is wonderful. And it's very Southeast Asian. It's very Asian, because the Western world is very much, you need a form to define what architecture is, and it has to have a category, right? So yeah, so if you're going back and you're trying to find a bastard in France, it should be very open, right? It's usually something that isn't in the system. And it usually tells some type of story about life. It's not just, it has some interesting clue in terms of life that is unrevealed, not a popular thing. But it always has to have some interesting spatial quality as well. It can't just be this dumb, boring shack that you include because it was done by underprivileged people. I don't believe in social architecture. Sorry. Architects need to do architecture. We're not experts in social work. So there has to be interesting architectural ideologies in the subjects that we choose. There has to be really interesting spatial concepts, tectonics, or whatever. Okay. So to me, people may look at my work and say, oh, you're looking at kind of shanty towns, blah, blah, blah. You're probably working for the underprivileged. That's like an offset. It happens. It just happens to be that. But I'm an architect. I don't pose to be a social worker. I don't want to save the world. I think it's very important for the new generation because sometimes we get clouded in trying to be good, the good person, and try to push architecture into a realm that isn't even architecture. Bangkok Bastards is still architecture. It's still design. So that's, I want to make sure. Or Paris Bastards should definitely have spatial architectural qualities to them, but maybe it's redefined in a way. My methods of, I've actually tried to find or found various bastards outside of Thailand for various lectures. Like in Korea, I presented Jeju Island Bastards, and I use Google Earth and Google Street View, and I tour the country. That's the amazing thing about Google Street View, is that you can actually find almost whatever you can by walking. It's actually even less tiring. You don't have to walk the street. So I go into an area that I've researched before that I feel like is not homogenous. So I go to an area that is a good mix where I think, and the locals that I've talked to say, hey, this is interesting to find. It's almost like going to hunt Pokemon. So I say, hey, what's a good place to hunt for bastards? And the locals would tell me, oh, try this neighborhood. It's got kind of a mix of variety of people and architecture. And so I go in and I start going through Google Street View to look at things that I think are interesting. So that became very important, especially when I was teaching students how to do research during COVID, when they couldn't go out of their homes. So Google Street View became very important. Yeah, and maybe I'll, when I've gone through the basic Bangkok bastard stuff, I can show you some bastard projects from different countries as well. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
And how you use the materials from the Bangkok Bazaar in your project?
Okay, I think this is a good time for me to bring in some slides. All right. Well, I'm just going to show you the one project that I feel like ties a lot of the research together. And so what I want to show you, I'll skip back and forth between research and design, because it doesn't necessarily work out where, I do research here and I suddenly use it in the design. It's not such a linear process. I've had to collect and document bastards for 10 years to have a Bible, a manual. And I don't want it to stop, actually. That's why I created my Bangkok Bastards website, almost like a Wikipedia, so that other people can add their own bastards to it in Thailand or throughout the world. And so remember when I told you when I came back and I struggled because I didn't have this body of knowledge of Thai architecture? So the antidote is this manual that I'm continually building with others' help, so that there's a contemporary Thai architectural history, what I consider Bangkok Bastards. And so that is always available for me. So whenever there's a project or a problem that is necessary, I look whatever is necessary and choose that, right? So why don't I just show you a few things right now? This is just the first example of what a bastard is. This is called a bridge boat. So you see two boats, long-tail boats in a canal about an hour from my house. And you see how this speedboat just passing by. So now you're going to see this man in the yellow shirt pull on this pulley system. He's going to pull one boat from one side, what we call a long-tail boat for traveling on the canal, to the other, thus transforming two boats into a bridge. So I call this a boat bridge bastard. This to me is what Thai design is. I feel like Thai don't invent a lot. We hack. We use things that are existing and then we twist and turn them into something else. And so after documenting a bank, after photographing them or filming them, and then we draw. Our office draws. We model them very simply on programs, whether it's draw in AutoCAD or 3D modeling simple on like SketchUp. I don't know, the Europeans may not even use SketchUp. It's so simplistic, but now it's Rhino. But they're very simple forms. And we just basically use 4 drawings: plan, section, elevation, isometric. But we are very meticulous about which angle, which section cut, which plan cut we do. So it's a good lesson for students as well, because I don't do fancy drawings. I just do these 4 drawings. And I want to teach the students that they don't need to do elaborate perspective animations. If you just do these 4 architectural drawings well, and you cut them at the right place, you fine-tune them in the way you represent them, and the details you include and exclude, you can tell a story. So with this one, my Bangkok Bastard drawings are not clean. They're not minimal. They're not black and white. They're full of life and color and texture and messiness, because I feel like that's Bangkok. That's Thailand. So I had to kind of fight the urge to do these clean drawings that typical architects do, right? But as you know, it takes a lot more time to Photoshop all these textures in. But we're so crazy that we actually go in and photograph the people wearing the right clothes, having the right ethnicity into our because we don't want to put regular templates like universal people into our drawings, because it's not real. We want the people in our drawings, even the dogs, even the motorcycles, to be real, okay? And so because we feel like architecture isn't just the building, it's the dirty water in the canal, the trash in the water, the motorcycle, the stray dogs, the corrugated, the rusted corrugated metal. Everything to us is space and architecture in Thailand, right? And then this is a section, but we try to, cut the section in the proper place. Where you cut the section, you see the line that pulls the pulley, and it's given enough slack so that the operator knows it can't pull it too tight or else it get entangled in the propeller. Detail, right? So that we tell the story not only urbanistically, architecturally, but through details and construction of how the pulley system works. So that's a typical Bangkok Bastard. And so I'll show you this one example of how various research. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. This is one of the first research I ever started 10 years ago. It was construction worker house, right? So the construction worker house in Thailand is very different than in France. When you're building a condominium or a large-scale project, many times the builders live right on the site. And so this is a high rise that the construction workers here are building. And so they basically find a tight corner between the periphery of the property and the building itself to kind of build their own dorm. So I call this a construction worker house. So it's made out of scavenged materials they found on site, or cheap materials. And once you look at it at first, it seems messy and disheveled, but there's a certain level of life and beautiful composition to this. But I didn't want to just photograph this as a typical, because when I came back, I'm still a Westerner. I didn't want to be just a typical romantic Westerner who photographs, vernacular shanty towns, right? Even though they're compelling. So we had to go in and measure and really understand how a construction worker house works. So we start to see that it's derived of two elements, right? The core and the scaffolding, right? Okay, Paris is back. So the construction worker house, Paris, is derived of actually a core, very small rooms, very claustrophobic, very hot, not very nice to live in because it's, it's not well insulated. But what makes them work is this scaffolding element. It's this veranda element, that circulation, but also becomes multi-purpose space where you cook, you wash laundry, you hang laundry, you drink, you get drunk. And so it's this multi-purpose space that's a buffer between sun and rain. And so once you understand that the construction worker house, their system, you see how the workers play with the system. Like for this one, this is another house in the back, but the workers have manipulated the formula. So as you can see here, this one has a double roof. There's a roof of the house itself, and then there's a double plywood roof that works as a helmet to protect from flying debris, hammers and nails that get dropped from the high rise that would go through the thin metal sheet house. So this becomes a protective second roof. This is another beautiful construction worker house. But this one doesn't have a double loaded corridor. It actually has a single. It doesn't have a wraparound, a single loaded corridor. It's a double loaded corridor. But even with a double loaded corridor, it's actually a wind tunnel that people still wash their clothes and cook on this public space. And again, it's a public space. It's a shared space. And once you understand that the core and the scaffolding can become a set. So you have core, scaffolding, core becomes combined to create a housing, right? And not only as a system, but as detail. So here, the workers fold a simple piece of corrugated sheet to become a rain runnel, but it also works as a reflective light. So light bounces off to the underside of this corrugated sheet and becoming a kind of a lighting fixture. So it's both gutter as well as light fixture, a daylight fixture. Secondly, we also research an interesting building typology called the curtain sex motel in Thailand. So I don't know if you have love motels in Paris or is every motel love motel, I don't know. But in Thailand, we have what we call Rongram Man Root, which Peach knows. She's probably seen this in Thai TV shows and soap operas. So I'll show you what it is. It looks like a Corbusier building with brise soleil, right? Oh, I'm so happy I get to speak to French people. I can say brise soleil and you know what I'm talking about, right? So this is actually a descendant of the American motor hotel. So you know what a motel is? In the 1950s, you have traveling salesmen who were driving all throughout the country to sell shower curtain rings. And so these hotels were created so that motorists can actually drive and park in front of their rooms so that Americans can actually, they live in their car can actually have a hotel that is catered for their car. But then the Thais took that model and bastardized it and turned it into something that suits their own dark culture. So this is called the Picnic Hotel. It has a tunnel, right? So the clientele here could be an elderly man or elderly woman who come in a car with dark tinted windows, and they usually have a friend who's not their wife or their husband. So it's a little extramarital affair, or young teenagers who want their first experience and don't want people to know. So what happens is a car drives in. Oh, I want to tell you one thing. So the Curtain Sex Motel, it doesn't have an architect, right? But in the end, they use the brise soleil, right? It looks like it's this elaborate sun, screen. But can you tell there aren't any windows behind the brise soleil? It's basically this psychological mask. They do this kind of mask so that nobody remembers this hotel because the clientele wants to have secrecy. So the client would drive in their car and drive through the tunnel. Sometimes the tunnel is very long and scary, but then it takes you to this open courtyard. And around the courtyard or internal street, there are all these parking spots with red curtains. And so you would drive and park in your curtain, and the attendant would close the curtain. And so once you park in here, there's a room that's connected to your parking spot, and you can go in and play games or have a little rendezvous, right? And once you finish your little escapade, you get in your car and you leave. There's a secret exit out the side street because they always say the husband and the wife is waiting at the front entry. So, this is a bastard. It doesn't have a world famous architect designing it, but it's an incredible piece of architecture, no? And so here's a diagram. You go in and then you go out. And I wanted to, this hotel, this is the owner of the picnic hotel. And I actually loved that first project that we documented, and I thought I was going to get to redesign it and turn it into a regular hotel, but then it actually became demolished, which is sad. But then 4 years later, Papa Tony here called me and said, "Oh, I bought another sex motel to renovate. Would you like to redesign that?" I said, "Definitely, yes." And so this was demolished, but then he bought another one. This one's called the Mit Paisan Hotel, which means friendship hotel. All these sex motels have very cute names. So the friendship hotel will turn into the Samsen Street Hotel. I want to tell you a little history. The owner that you saw earlier, Papa Tony, this is his photo when he was 21 years old. He began as a street food vendor selling Thai iced coffee on his cart, and this is his wife. So his history is very important to this project. So eventually he saved up enough money from selling iced coffee, and he bought a taxi, saved up more money, and became a manager at a tailor shop, and then opened his own tailor shop, eventually saving enough money to buy his own real estate or converting sex motels. So this is the one we're talking about right here. And it has a courtyard in the middle. It has your typical tunnel in the front that you can go through. That leads to a smallish internal street. But then the problem with all sex motels is the rooms are very small, like 3.5 meter by 4 meter, because they're not designed to accommodate many lengthy activities. But then the owner said, whatever you do when you renovate this hotel, I want you to accommodate for each room 3 guests, not 2 guests, 3 guests. Because at that time, the kind of the clientele was changing. It used to be backpackers coming to this area, but now small families are coming here, mother, father, and kind of small child or children. So he wanted me to accommodate a sleeping area, not just a pull-out bed, another sleeping area that's multifunctional, but it also will create him extra income for each room, another 600 baht per head. And so I said, okay. But he said that create an extra accommodation, but don't put too much money in it. Look out for budget. Don't increase the structure. So I told him I do this. I said, I'm going to create a cantilevered bed box from the existing structure. So these are the little bed box that cantilever from the existing structure, which was checked by a structural engineer, no problem. It could accept the weight. So this were the original structure of the curtain sex motel, right? I add these little bay windows, right? So these little bed boxes, very small, they're minimal. They're 1.2 meter by 2.2 meter, size of a twin size bed for one person, because we want to minimize the expenditure and minimize the structural addition. So in doing so, I added these small little pods so that once I do, I'm left over with these gaps, right? Because I don't want to create a large concrete addition. So in these gaps, I fill with the scaffolding. right? The scaffolding that we learned about from the construction worker house. But this scaffolding will actually work to turn this once mysterious, dark, and unwelcoming sex motel inside out, turning into kind of what I call a street hotel, kind of a hotel that is vibrant and re-energizes the neighborhood that used to be a red light district. And so the scaffolding is divided into three elements: the porch, the alley, and the outdoor theater, each component having its own function. So the alley, or the soi in Thai, actually solves a very mundane problem in apartment design and condominium design in Thailand. Because we're a tropical country, we have air conditioning. And all of my clients who want me to design condominiums or apartments say, "Oh, Chat, put in a balcony in every room, every facade, because balconies are beautiful." Americans and Europeans love balconies. They say Europeans love it because they're full of balconies in Paris. But in Thailand, nobody goes out to use a balcony. It's hot and dusty and noisy. So the balconies become a housing station for air condensers, electrical pipes, downspouts, pretty much your MEP, mechanical, electrical, sanitary systems. And whenever something goes wrong with your air conditioner, your electricity, or whatever, the repairman comes and knocks on your door, and they have to walk through your apartment, through your bedroom, to go to your balcony to fix your air condenser. So this alley allows the repairman to climb through this vertical snake to service all the air condensers and all the electrical, all the sanitary, without having to go through your room. But it also has a different function, which I'll show you later. So this is a vertical alley that snakes through the facade. Okay, this is a side story. The stair that accesses the alley on top was derived from a local gas station bastard. We always wondered in Thailand, in gas stations, you have a high canopy, about 10 meters high. And do you ever wonder how they change the light bulbs on here? In Thailand, every gas station has this cute little stair structure on wheels made out of inch-by-inch tubes. I thought it was quite beautiful. So it's this little stepladder. So this stepladder became a bastard mother that we developed a new stair here as well. But to get back to the story, the second scaffolding is called the porch. And this porch scaffolding is actually utilizes a much neglected space in Thailand, which is a 6-meter setback space from the property line. And normally, in the edge of a property in Thailand, commercial developers say, "We don't want the homeless or dogs to come in. Let's just put up a solid wall, 3-meter wall. And then you'll have a security guard to, see who can come in, who cannot." Usually it's a divider between the rich and the poor. So I told them, instead of having a wall that surrounds our complex that divides people, we should have a porch that actually connects hotel guests to the locals. So this veranda area, covered veranda, becomes this connective tissue between the hotel and the locals. But the porch scaffolding also is related to the history of the owner, who is very much sympathetic to street food in Thailand. So our neighbor next door is his name is Brother Chicken. He's a vendor of these Thai sausages. So Brother Chicken wakes up every morning at 4 a.m. to create his Thai sausages, and it's a street food. And so what we did suggest to the owner is that let's create a new street food model where we send guests down in the hotel. They can choose to have continental breakfast of sausages and eggs, or you can send them out to have street food for breakfast, whether they're Thai beignets or Thai custard or sausages or chicken. In that sense, we create economy for the neighbors. So we're able to support the local street food. In turn, we're able to brand ourselves as an authentic street hotel, right? because we actually sell authentic street food that isn't made from our kitchen, but made from our street food vendor neighbors. And so this is another vendor who does อาหารจานเดียว so custom order meat on rice. We also said that the scaffolding will house elements of Thai architecture that isn't really recognized. We feel that architecture in Thailand isn't just floors and roofs and walls. They're actually composed of plastic stools, folding tables, street furniture, food carts, even these lights, which we call Fairat Damnen, which are festive lights. All of these create space, free-flowing tropical breathing space, informal spaces. So these become architecture in Thailand as well. This is a shot of the soft opening of the hotel, where you can see how the vendors are allowed to come in and sell their food. Because at that time, the government was banning all street food in Thailand. I don't know if Nong Peach remembers, but there was a time where the Thai government, especially the Thai mayor, said that street food is too messy. We're going to take the lead of Singapore. Singapore puts all their vendors into a food court or a hawker station. Very nice and neat and and tidy. We can't do that in Thailand. We're not Singaporeans. Thai vendors can't push their carts 3 kilometers to a street food court. It's not possible, right? And we're not a small little city like Singapore. We're a big nation. Everything is spread out. So how do we do away? We're trying to create order, but also allow for freedom in trying to create this space for street food. So once the vendor comes into our station, the police can't chase them out, right? At that point, the police were actually telling them to move away from the street. They can't. They're being illegal, so they can find temporary haven in the hotel. And if you remember what I told you about the alley, vertical alley where you service air condensers, on weekends and festivals, it turns into a vertical stage where the hotel can actually give street concerts for the neighborhood, thus enlivening the neighborhood. So here's a little clip of that opening night where we have a film. I hope the video is okay. So the landings, because the air condenser landings become dance platforms for the dancers. All the while the neighbors come out enjoying. Okay, so you see how the street becomes more than itself. Programming is very important for us. The invention of program, I think, is one of the key ingredients of being a Bangkok bastard. It usually tries to create new programs or combines existing ones to create a new program that really responds, right? Because I think in Thailand now, there's an epidemic. Whenever there's a developer, they just have these 3 or 4 things that they say that they're going to do. Okay, I have some property in Bangkok. I'll do a condominium, apartment, neighborhood mall, or or mega mall, right? There's just a typical standard, very uncreative way of programming, and it's making our city like any other city in Southeast Asia, or like any other city in any developing nation in Africa, or in South America, or in Asia. Okay, so once you come into the hotel, even the interior design is reflected in the idea of the street architecture. So this reception table is fashioned by this kind of very cheap bent steel that's inspired by the burglar grills of the neighbor windows. The idea of the street the street graphics come in so that we had very little budget even for environmental graphics or signage. So we basically use the epoxy, the floor epoxy to our advantage, save a lot of costs. So we built the signage into a horizontal billboard. So it's almost a little game. Once you come out of your elevator, you see your room number on the floor. Let's say 210, and then let's say you're 208, and you follow your dotted line to your room. So it works as a sign. Even budgetary constraints. I didn't have much budget to be a beautiful ceiling. So we just use a typical engineering, what we call a wireway. It's just a tray where engineers put wires in, but then we separate them and label them both in English and in Thai, where this is air conditioning, landline, electricity, so that it actually organizes. In Thailand, if you put up a ceiling, all the elements on top are just a jungle of wires. Nobody's organized, but this forces them to organize the MEP, right? And becomes a design element. So this is one of the rooms, and you have these bed boxes. If you can guess, can you guess why this is an elevated bed box? You have bed boxes that are on the ground, but on top as well. But this bed box is elevated because, you know, the bottom in section, it's a walkway for the repairman, right? So this hotel still has a tunnel that doesn't lead to curtains, but it leads to a new experience. So there's an outdoor movie. We also introduced this lounging pool with benches on 3 sides that you can sit and watch a movie. We invented a new type of balcony called a leg dangling balcony. It forces you to turn out to watch the movie. But also, what's more importantly is it forces you to turn outside and look at each other's faces when you're watching. So if you come to the hotel, I hope you can get a chance to come. The acoustics are really great because you have guests from, Malaysia talking to guests from Switzerland across, yelling and saying, "Hi, how are you? Where are you from?" So it becomes a new communal space. Much better than being in your room and just playing on your iPhone, right? It forces you to come out and really active and engage in a new type of community, which was based on an old type community in Thailand. This is a photo of an old Nang Klang Plang, so outdoor movie in Thailand that we would have at temple festivals. So it's kind of a reintroduction of an old program into a new setting. And so lastly, we devised this pulley system that if you press a button, there's a little gondola, a basket that sends popcorn and food up to your balcony, so you can eat while you watch the movie. So in essence, to sum up for Kun Peach and to everyone, this scaffolding, right, that you found in the construction worker housing, even though it may not look like it, but it has the DNA that led to this scaffolding in the Samsen Street Hotel. So hopefully you see how research leads to kind of design in our work. Yeah. So that was a lengthy answer to your simple question. But I think it'd be good for you to see some graphics. Yeah.
Can I ask something? I wanted to know that why you choose to paint all the scaffolding in green.
It's a good question, Kun Peach. Only the smart people ask that question. And it's a local answer. Okay. So in Thailand, or in that neighborhood, all the Thais love bright colors. They would paint their shop houses red, green, blue, purple, pink, bright colors, right? But then that was in the age of 40, 50 years ago. By this time, what used to be bright pink is now a muted pastel pink. What used to be a bright hunter green is now a faded pastel green. So I basically painted this a context color, but muted after 30 years. You know what I'm saying? It's a historical color, but after having been drenched in sun and rain and wind after 30 years. So that was our story. Yeah.
You have been work a lot. So do you have your favorite project? And why is that your favorite project?
Oh, it's like asking for your favorite child.
Yes.
Every child. My newest child is my favorite child. Right? Yeah, I think that's how everybody should think. Every project has its own uniqueness because you get excited when you're able to push your ideas in a newer direction. So that's why the most interesting project is usually the most current project.
While you working, do you have any reference in your project and who inspired you the most?
Ah, my reference is Bangkok Bastards.
Yes.
I don't look at architecture. I haven't looked at the zine, Architizer, uh, uh, um, anything. I don't look at design websites. I'm not interested in. I've been through that world before. I went through the whole process. But now I feel like the things that I'm looking at around Bangkok are much more interesting and authentic to what I'm doing, right? In the end, I want to create authenticity. I'm not interested in creating a trend for the world or the global because that trend changes every 5 minutes when their new project is uploaded. There's no meaning in it for me, right? Again, it's a sense of what your goals are. I'm not saying that's bad, but I've set certain goals for myself as an architect. My goal is to basically create an architecture that's rooted in the place that I'm working. I'm not interested in going in Thai. The phrase is going inter, right? I'm not interested in going international to creating international frame. I don't care about that. I want to make Thailand. I want to send an example to how do you create authentic architecture in Thailand that has its own character, that's rooted in place. So if that's my goal, then my references should be applied towards that goal, right? Yeah. But architects, can I say architects that I do admire, that I go back and look at, are architects who have a big body of work, not architects who change the way they work at every project. I love looking at Frank Lloyd Wright. I love looking at Louis Kahn. Um, I love Alvaro Siza, right? So I mean, I look to them because I could trace their body of work and its reflection on their age and on the epic of their country at that time, right? You look at Wright's work, and he went through a period of the prairie houses because there's a certain attitude towards creating this house that's horizontal, that's low-lying, that's associated with the Midwest of America at that time, right? But then he changed and he started to look at the Usonian houses that talked about more kind of prefabricated, way of living. And eventually he moved on to those later phases. Same thing with Alvaro Siza. You could trace his work. That's, to me, is very meaningful, that you can identify a person's body of work, and you can see the nation in their work as well, and a culture in their work, but also breakthroughs in all these architectural inventions, right? Yeah. Jeffrey Bawa, another person that maybe Paris is not familiar with. So he's a Sri Lankan architect. Jeffrey Bawa, Bawa, incredible body of work from Sri Lanka. Basically, one of the fathers of tropical modern architecture, but modern in terms of craft, not modernism modern. Yeah. Yep.
And where is your interest now? Do you feel more interest in teaching or in architectural work or more research?
I operate on a golden triangle rule. 3. Research, teaching, practice. I do these 3 because they feed to each other. Things I want to accomplish in practice, I don't have enough clients, or I don't have clients that'll, let's say, pay me to do a certain type of work that I want to do, then I do research. Right? The research that I can do only to a certain part, but I can't do enough because I don't have enough manpower, or I want a new perspective on this topic. So I teach this research, right? And so research allows me to do what I can't do in research. Teaching allows me to do something I can't do in research. And eventually teaching and practice, right? That allows me to do something that I can't do in practice. And then they cross in different directions. So that's why enjoying skipping around teaching and practice and research, because they're all interrelated.
And this is our last question. So, do you have any plan in the future? Did you plan to develop something or not?
Yeah, I've worked on Bangkok Bastards for over 10 years, but as with the world, Thailand is changing. People aren't just looking at cities anymore, right? We have to look at the countryside. We have to look at rurality. The biggest danger right now, especially in developing nations, is our rice farmland is being turned into more cities. So my next goal is basically to actually, we've been doing it for 5 years, is to look at rural bastards. I call them rural offspring, rural crossbreeds. All right. So I look not only, it expands my research. So I'm not just looking at buildings. I'm looking at agricultural buildings. I'm looking at ecologies and landscapes. Maybe I'll show you a drawing. My wife is actually, she teaches product or industrial design, but she doesn't really do industrial design. She's more specializes in crafts. So she works with indigenous tribes, hill tribes, in the countryside and the mountains. And so I actually go with her to, this is a village in Ratchaburi. It's a province in the middle of Thailand. And we look at the Karen tribe, Karen. In Thai, it's called Galian, right? So we have hundreds of indigenous hill tribes, not only in the mountains, but actually in the sea, which we call sea nomads, Chao Lei. So there are many indigenous people who actually who live in the mountains. So this is some of the drawings that we've done. So it's not architecture. We studied how they did their they have an incredible rotational crop system. So we would do drawings and plans like this. It's all landscape. So these are the forests. This is their rotational crops. This is where their house is. So let me show you real quick. So these are a series of drawings, ecological of the rotational crop system, where it's a controlled burn first, and then they use the ash, and they mix the ash of the burn into the soil, and then they don't use insecticides. So what they do here, as you can see, this is where the rice and the mixed rice farm is. You see this ring of plants on the outside? This is a ring of pumpkins and squash. So instead of using harmful pesticides, they plant a ring of squash so that the rodents come and eat the pumpkin and squash and get full at this. and so they don't eat the inside anymore. So it's another way of preventing rodents from eating your thing. And then they start to plant. And also the crops, it isn't just rice, it's rice, sesame, chili, flour. So they plant rice along with other plants so that it keeps nutrition of the soil always changing. And this is sorry, I'm going to change resolution real quick. Okay, that's a better resolution. So our drawings are very detailed. So you can see a different bunch of crops: rice, flour, sesame, and this is a ring of squash and pumpkin. And then this is our scarecrow system, or their scarecrow system. So there's a string throughout the entire lot. And this is a clothes hanger with a t-shirt, a white used t-shirt in every grid. And all this string is attached to this one guy lying down, relaxing, and he just pulls it every 5 minutes. And so once he pulls it, all of the shirts dance and chase the crows away. So it's kind of a manual scarecrow system. So, and then we do these drawings as well, right, of their indigenous houses. Sorry, let me do this. Roof on, roof off. Yeah, so we're doing a lot more research in the rural areas to understand these typologies of not only indigenous tribes but Thai farmers. Pak Isan, the Isan area is the agricultural basin of Thailand. It's the northeastern part of Thailand. So we're spending a lot of time working there, researching agricultural architecture as well as textiles as well. So yeah, so the next phase is actually working on rural bastards to come up with new higher density architecture and urbanism I call rurbanism, rural plus urban, right? So to help develop the countryside.
Yes, I would like to share something, but I'm not sure if it's gonna spoil my work because it was present for you.
I would love to see it.
But it's not finished yet, but
okay.
So I already choose my bastard. I think that the story of the Bokunist, the bookseller,
wonderful,
Seine River, is a nice story to do the research.
You even have the format of our Bangkok Bastards. I love it.
Yes. I like the format.
It's like great. It's amazing. Beautiful.
There is a huge polemics. Maybe you heard about it?
Yes.
Because they are going to remove that bastard for the Olympic Games. And when they will remove it, they will break everything. And the booksellers, they don't want to have new one. They want to keep their own architecture, and it's a big problem. So that's very relevant that Peach choose this bastard. I think it's very actual.
Wonderful, Peach. I mean, and these are beautiful.
And I saw on the news that the bookseller have been fighting for their right to be there since about 16th century. So I think it was a nice story to tell.
Wow. Wow. You should do a project based on this research that really touches on this really great cause. A new bastard that allows them to continue, but also serve it could be a new bastard that allows both this to flourish. the Olympics as well as maintaining the life of the existing books. I don't know. I think that's always the point of doing a bastard. It isn't just as academic research, right? It's usually literature design that's a compromise between the problems that are being solved, because it's really about, in modernism, it's always about, I'm creating this new thing to change the world, right? The world's never seen before. But the idea of thinking as a bastard is an offspring. So there's a way of doing this creative compromise that satisfies everybody involved and results in as a new thing that is both. So I would love for you to see a project where, how do you reconcile both? Still allow this incredible typology to exist, but also serve the idea of the Olympics in a creative way. I'd love to see it. This is great. I'm so happy to see this.
So the challenge is set, Peach.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So it will be ready at the end of January, I think. So this is only the first steps, and they
Wonderful.
have till the end of January to finish and to send it to you back.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, this is wonderful. Congratulations. I want to see it further.
Okay, so Kopkum Ka.
Oh,
My
Megan.
Thai is very bad. I'm sorry. I made effort for the pronunciation, but I think it's totally
Great.
awful. But Kopkum Ka for your time and for this very, very inspiring exchange. I think your architecture is so narrative. It's a story. It's a story in every details, and that's so interesting. That make it very spiritual and very meaningful. A lot of things to do and to think about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well. So hopefully we'll get to meet in person one day, either here or there.
Yeah. I will write you. I will write you once we plan everything for Thailand, and let's do it to make you come to France.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I'll be with Bunserm in April as well, but then we're doing an exhibition, a small exhibition together in Milan, but that's far away. But let's see in the future. We'll have time to work something out long term. Okay.
But Milano is not so far from Paris.
Okay, maybe.
So it will be in April also. So Belgium and Milano.
April 15th. That's the opening at the salon, the Milan Furniture Fair. The big fair. So it's April 15th, I think. Yeah, that's when I'll be there. I'll probably be there from April 12th to April 18th, 19th, unless there's something else. I'll extend my stay. Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you, Peach, to prepare everything. And good luck. We can't wait to see the result of your book in East Bastard.
Definitely. I want to see it. Make sure you send it to me. Okay. And it'll be a part of the Bangkok Bastards website with your credit, with everything.
Okay.
Great,
Thanks.
Peach. Thank you. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye and see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.